All right, folks,
Ooh.
welcome back to Mike and Maurice's Mind Escape. We have episode number 27 today. We're going to talk about the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Gnostic Gospels from Nag Hammadi, and other curious mystical texts.
Again, like I said, a lot of stuff I don't know how to spell, so you might have to help me look some of it up.
He literally does not know any of this, but
Nope.
he will hopefully know a ton by the time we're done.
Yeah.
Welcome to Mike and Maurice. All right. But we'll jump right into this. The Dead Sea Scrolls were found in 1947 in a cave in Qumran, in the Middle East. There's about 900 texts. They're on parchment and papyrus. They were found. It's an interesting story how they were found. So a Bedouin farmer, with the Bedouins are people that live in the desert. They're able to live off the land somehow with very little water and everything. But this guy was going through the desert with his livestock, and he threw a rock into a cave, and the rock, he heard something shatter, and he's like, oh shit. So he goes in the cave, finds there's a bunch of these like little pottery things with ancient scrolls in it. So he grabs them all, as many as he can. I think he brought some people back and stuff too. And they grabbed these things, they brought him back, and his mom, I don't remember the story, mom or grandma, aunt, something, burned some of these in the fire because they had to keep warm too. And they weren't even thinking about it on the level that these could be some important stuff. So some of them actually got burned, just by, but then this guy realized these things could be valuable. So he tried to
Wait, what were
sell
they
them.
wrote on?
Parchment and papyrus.
What the fuck is papyrus?
Uh,
Like a fruit? Dried fruit skin or
no.
something?
Papyrus is a type of, I think it's like it's basically like wood, I think. But
Here we go.
parchment could be animal skin that they like dry out, and they treat it certain ways and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, papyrus is just like an old style paper,
Looks like
basically.
it's some kind of plant they transform or something.
Yeah, they do. That's what I'm saying. It's like like think about how they mill paper now. Obviously, that's a complex process, but back then they did something similar. It just took a lot longer to produce that kind of stuff.
God, I'm smart. I'm thinking of papaya.
you,
Idiot.
you were thinking
Idiot.
of. I'm teaching Gnostic Gospels to literally a man that thought papyrus was papyrus. So. Um. Anyways, so back to the story. So this guy throws it. They get the stuff. They go back. The mom or whatever burns some of them. He realizes they're valuable, starts to sell them, and then all of a sudden you start seeing these things all over the place. People that because there's people from that area that obviously that's not their belief, whether they believe in Islam or Judaism or whatever, whoever is in that area.
Yeah.
So um, in terms of importance, they're very important, and you get a lot of stuff in there that you
Why
don't
was she?
get from
Why the fuck was she burning them? Was she?
again, because it was just no significant, it was just like, to them it's paper. They don't see paper out there either, so it was just like kindling, or like people, you got to think about this from the perspective that people will burn stuff like that to survive. It's not necessarily like thinking long term, like, oh, this could be some important stuff or whatever. They're thinking, how can we survive the night,
Night.
basically.
Yeah, but well, I guess aren't they surrounded by wood and shit? If I found some paper with some
No, they're
scratchings
not.
on it.
It's in the desert, bro. Here, I'm gonna pull up a picture right now so you can see what I'm talking about. Okay. Yeah, they're literally in these caves. I don't know. So it's such a random chance thing that this is where this shit was found. Um, so you see there these little
Yeah,
openings.
that's crazy.
Um, and it's kind of, look at it. It's kind of a weird. It almost looks like a hand, like one, two, three, four, five. Little
Right.
nubs here. Um, but yeah. So, and it's interesting. They think the people that wrote that were this specific Jewish sect called the Essenes. There's been speculation that Jesus might have even been part of this little group, and they were kind of like outcasts because there's a lot of if you weren't for whatever was popular at the time back then, you were a heretic. So if you believe something that was against the grain of what everybody else was currently believing in, you were a heretic, or you were weird, or you were an
Yeah.
outcast. So in
It's
terms
like
of
Christianity in Silicon Valley right now. You say you're Christian, dude, people flip.
yeah,
It's
you like
crazy.
that
It's all
show?
getting full. It's pretty good.
Yeah, did you see the little episode last night
It wasn't last night. It comes out
or
on
two
Sunday.
nights ago? Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, I watch them all. I watch them all.
That was pretty crazy how they did that. Fast forward like 2 months, this thing is cleared.
Oh
Thank God.
yeah.
Um,
But teach me, man. Teach me. What the fuck were on
okay,
these?
so look here. I'll pull up some of the you can get an idea how worn these things out are.
So do they still have them in possession, or are they?
Yeah, they're being studied. They're actually kept in super controlled, like humidity and
Yeah, yeah.
to study them you have to go in there with like they're encased, and there are people. I think there's a cool National Geographic little like 45-minute documentary thing about them. Anybody can look on Netflix. I believe it's on there. But yeah, they're just old as fuck, and they're very, very brittle, and they've lost some of them already just to like time and the aging, once they're exposed to obviously air and moisture and stuff.
Yeah, that's like
um
all the old artifacts in DC. They won't let you take pictures or anything because even the
right
Flash will like decompose them.
right so it's got to be super air controlled. It's got to be the climate, in terms of like I said, humidity and um
They can't like
temperature
laminate
control.
that shit or something.
Well, there's
Oh, they're
copies of
probably
it.
afraid that they're gonna
There,
break the fucking thing.
a lot of it's been translated. I think there's still maybe a few of them that haven't been um translated yet. But I mean, shit, it's there. Some of those have missing like chunks out of them, like whole sentences and stuff too. So I think part of it's left up for interpretation as well. It's not just so cut and dry. Analyzing these things, it's not like, oh, I'm just reading this in ancient, Greek or Hebrew or whatever.
Yeah, that's the skit. These guys are chewing gum. They rip off a little sentence, spit their gum
Right,
out in it. Fucking 10,000 years of history is gone.
right.
Some dude spit his fucking gum onto it.
Burning it for kindling. Yeah.
Yeah. That lights a cigar off half the corner.
Check this out. So this is where they're found in terms of the Dead Sea and everything, the very
A
top there.
Judah!
Yeah, so it's literally in the middle of the desert. Like I said, the Bedouins. How we did that one on Petra in the desert, that cool ass thing from the third Indiana Jones, where it's just carved out of the rock wall. I
Yeah.
think we talked about it on our ancient lost civilization episode. But those are the people that basically live there. They're super good at finding ways to survive in the desert with like no rainfall, basically no water. I don't know how they do it. I'm sure that modern days it's a lot easier, but back then it was like, how are these people living?
They find a way.
But yeah, so and then the other things about the Dead Sea Scrolls that I find interesting is that there's certain parts of it that people will dismiss too. Oh, like that wouldn't be in the real Bible or whatever. But this shit's old.
Well,
Number
what are
one.
these things? What is
Okay, well,
this?
so see if you can pull up the contents of it. I forget how there's a decent amount of stuff in there. But there's 14 Greek letters used throughout it. So there was some Greek, some Aramaic. It wasn't just composed of one language either. It was like a collection of different stuff. You know, one of them's on copper, so they're not all on. That was the other thing too. One of them's on a copper scroll too, like pure copper. So they weren't all just on papyrus or parchment. There's some weird, stuff there.
So what does it say? It says Cave 4 was discovered on August 1952.
Yeah, so some of them haven't even been excavated to that point.
Damn. Yeah, there's a
Uh,
bunch of them. There's like 12. There's 12 caves or Cave 12
yeah.
discovered on February 2017. So these guys are still chipping away and finding new stuff every day, it seems.
There's been speculation too that they hid it. They were out in the desert and they hid all those texts and stuff because at the time the Romans were ruling, that there could have been some sort of let's hide this shit, get it away from the Romans, keep this
Yeah,
tradition alive, but not let it, let it take this whole thing down, basically.
yeah. Well, let's get down to the nit grit. What? So what? It's just a type of Bible. It's
Well,
like
it's just
similar to
it's
the
a collection.
Bible
Okay,
and
so here's the thing: is people look at the Bible and they think the Bible is literally just one story. Do you know that the Bible is a collection of like 50? I mean, the New Testament's
right,
like a
right.
collection of like 50 different things that have nothing to do really. Everybody thinks that somebody sat down or within like 100 years of each other, whatever they think. That's not the case at all. It's just a collection. So this is actually a bigger collection. I think that there's certain things in there like Book of Enoch and like all. I don't know if that's for sure. And there, look that up, see if you can find that. But
So it's
there's
Enoch.
in terms of content, it's like some of this stuff, could be lost knowledge, or even if you don't believe in religion, maybe there's something in there that's useful. So I don't think that people should be looking at, oh, this is hoaxy or weird, or these Essene people weren't aligned exactly with what I believe or whatever. They weren't.
Yeah.
It wasn't like a bad or they're an agenda. It's not like some cult wrote down their beliefs on stuff and left it for people or anything like that.
Right, right.
Do you see anything on there about that?
I don't know. There's a lot of information on this shit. Not to call it shit. It's very important stuff we're talking here. I don't know. I can look up straight up if Enoch was a part of anything.
Yeah, just look
Let
up.
me see here. Dead Sea Scroll Enoch. The word I don't know how to spell. It says
Yeah,
Aromatic Enoch Scroll.
yeah.
There's nothing coming up together. Oh, it maybe did.
And it's got considered the oldest or the earliest, I'm sorry, Old Testament manuscript still in existence. It's got the Book of Esther.
So it said Old Testament stuff in it.
Yeah. I mean, the New Testament, a lot of it was from more recent stuff, like when Constantine redid the Bible, obviously left certain things out, kept added stuff in, so there was an agenda, I would say there.
Yeah, how do we feel about Constantine? This guy a real turd.
I don't know. The one that was played by Keanu Reeves was a real turd. But yeah, so I mean, look, in terms of their importance, I think they're hugely important, and I think there's also weird shit, and I know for a fact there's weird stuff in there because I've seen stuff talking about that's why people dismiss it or whatever, because they can't really, like certain, even there's stuff in the Bible. Obviously, we've talked about this,
So summing up the contents, you would say that it's like an offshoot of the Bible. It's a older version.
Yeah, and like more mystical aspects of it. There's not specific agendas at play. I feel like it was just more of like the knowledge of the time, and then let people take from it or whatever they will. I think, like I said, how many versions of the Bible's been revised a bunch of times too, and it's just a
Yeah.
collection of different stories. It's like playing the game telephone. By the time it gets to the last person, there's
Right.
Jesus meditating before he died and his soul going, now everybody thinks that he literally rose from the dead, which I guess we don't know. I wasn't there. But if you had to ask me based on everything I know, I would say it's far more realistic that it was an analogy for Jesus' soul leaving his body and ascending back up into heaven. That's what I would say. But, there's people out there that say differently. So, all right, let's jump from the Dead Sea Scrolls now. Let's go to
Jesus.
the Gnostic Gospels. Well, look, we could talk about the Dead Sea Scrolls all day, and maybe we'll revisit it in the future. But there's so much information there. I think people just need to be aware of it and just look into it, yourself a little bit, and just see.
Oh yeah.
If any of it resonates with you. I think it's super interesting either way, and the fact that where they were found, how they were found, it was almost like fate, So, but
Yeah, I'm interested to do some reading in the Bible too.
yeah, definitely revisit.
Regardless of what I believe or not, I think it's an interesting read. It might be a hard read,
right? And I liked a lot of
good tidbits in there.
the Dead Sea Sea Scrolls are awesome, but this is what I've been getting into lately, called the Gnostic Gospels. They were found in Nag Hammadi, Egypt, in 1945. Similarly, I think somebody like tripped over some pottery or something, and all these texts were exposed. Let's see if I can pull something up here. And they look old too. They look beaten down, brutalized. Text here.
So it was like right after the war ended.
Yeah. Well,
Where was this found?
Okay, so hold on. I was thinking about that the other day in Nag Hammadi in Egypt. I was thinking about that the other day. That's interesting you say that. Think about Roswell happened in 1947. And look, I'm not trying to correlate a bunch. I'm just saying there's some weird stuff
Tom
happening.
DeLonge.
There was some weird stuff happening during this time. In 1947, you had Roswell. There's numerous sightings around that range right after World War II. World War II had just ended. We had taken over all of the Nazi scientists, brought them into our, NASA and science and all that. And that's, the project paper.
Yeah, our torture chambers, if you will.
And then basically from there, you've got, so 1945, you find these Gnostic Gospels. 1947, you find, or 1946, 1947, you find the Dead Sea Scrolls. 1947, you've got, Roswell happening. I just think that if you look at it, there's something bigger at play, because we don't have stuff happening. I feel like that kind of stuff hasn't really happened in a long time that I can think of, where something, a few different hugely important things. Because even look, if you think religion's bullshit, or you think God's bullshit, or you're an atheist, or whatever the case may be, the coincidences of finding all these old texts within a couple of years that were hidden, that were just randomly found by, look at even Göbekli Tepe. That's probably the most modern thing I can think of that's similar with this guy. Hey, there's a bump on the ground. Oh wait, there's a massive early human temple that was built here. These people are just tripping over shit in the desert, and it's ended up being the most important shit ever found, so
yeah.
There's something to that. I don't know, but yeah, just that weird timeline. I think there's something to that as well, whether there's propaganda being created because of that, or against that, or whatever. I just feel like there's some weird shit there. But let's jump back to the Gnostic Gospels. So they were found in 1945 in Nag Hammadi. Same thing. I think they were looked at initially as like not that important. I don't know, these people, because these people, if you're not from that religion or don't have any perspective on that, you probably aren't even looking for something like that, or understanding, what that's all about, basically.
Yeah.
But there they are. Look at those beauties.
Those are worth lots of looties.
Loonies and toonies.
Yeah.
But I think you'll appreciate this. There's some here. I'll see if I can pull that up. There's some.
I'm doing a little reading on here on this stuff right here.
The Melchizedek's in here, buddy. Your buddy Melchizedek.
Yeah, it's right in the text. The Melchizedek text.
Hold on a second.
So what? This is just it's a book, about Jesus, the New Testament, but it varies a lot from the New Testament that we're familiar with.
Right.
Did you write this?
Here's I just copy shit down. No, I just make it into notation form. Take stuff and just edit a few things off of it, just so it's easy to see. But there's secret book of James, secret book of this, that, and the other. The book of John. A lot of these things are considered heretical, or you're a heretic if you believe this stuff, because there's a couple different figures throughout time. Like there's this guy Marcion who brought this stuff to kind of popularity, and from ancient Roman times. And then there was another guy that contradicted that and said that if you believe this, you're a heretic. So a lot of this stuff got shown as like you're a weirdo, you're a heretic, or whatever. But a lot of these books are fucking interesting as hell. Basically, what the Gnostic Gospels talk about is how the God that created our universe is not the God of all gods, not the God that we think that we're praying to, or the God of the Old Testament. The God in these texts that, the God of gods, what happened is the God, that created all things, created forethought, and from there, Christ's spirit was associated with the female aspect, which was Sophia. Now, Sophia went on her own and tried to create something without her other half, the Christ, and by creating that, created this creature or entity or whatever. His name's Yaldabaoth. And Yaldabaoth is the name of what we think of as God when we think of God from the Old Testament or whatever. And what this Yaldabaoth did was create a universe where he was trying to recreate the spiritual realm, and he wasn't the one true God, so he wasn't really able to recreate what he saw or what he knew of as the spiritual realm. Instead, he created what we know as our world, where there's error and hardship and heartache and murder and death, and it's not perfect. So people that have died and gone to heaven and been resuscitated or revived, they talk about heaven as this amazing, wonderful place. Well, and a lot of them talk about how they wish they stayed dead or wish that they could go back.
Right.
So, in terms of, you look at it like that, like you could say two things: that the God from the Old Testament is the one true God, and that it's all a test or whatever. Or you could say maybe he's another entity that's just part of the chain of command, and either way, I don't think anything's bad. I think back then, like the ancient days, I think there was a lot of like do or die type shit that we've kind of weeded out of our evolution of us in our spirituality. Meaning, look at the God of the Old Testament. He's very, very, very strict, very, very, very tough, very, very just, intense. And I don't think when people think of God, if he's this great ball, an entity of love and light and this and that, as long as you're a good person, how should you even, you shouldn't have to fear. There's a lot of people that walk around every day, fear for that they'll go to hell, fear that they'll cease to exist, whatever the case may be, based on their actions, but they're still good people. They're just worried about every little thing. So I think that there's something to this idea that the God that created all, it really is this God of love and this God of light. And maybe the God, or they call it the demiurge that created us. This demiurge, created this false thing, and we're basically trapped in these meat suits, if you will, these meat bodies. I've heard a couple people say, and really, so when he created that, the Yaldabaoth created us, he was immediately jealous, because when he breathed breath into Adam, he gave part of himself to Adam, and Adam was immediately better than him, or more superior in some way. So
yeah,
there's
look at his physique, man. The guy was fucking ripped.
So there's some sort of jealousy associated with that, meaning that when he gave us the breath of life, that he transferred something from God to us that made us immediately more valuable, or if you will. And there's a book of Adam in these Gnostic texts too that talk about all that you guys can look up. But
so is God pissed off at us? It wasn't our fault we were fucking created. I mean,
well, that's
that.
yeah, that's the point. He knows that, and I think he's there to guide us. Okay, so to hit on that point, that's interesting you say that. So in the Garden of Eden, the story goes that the devil tempted Eden as a serpent to eat from the tree of life. Now, the Gnostics look at it differently. They think that the God that was telling Eve to not eat the apple was actually Yaldabaoth, who was jealous, saying, "Don't eat from the tree. Don't have knowledge. Don't gain this aspect of life. Kind of a thing, holding humanity back." And God, being the serpent, said, "Eat from the." God came in as the serpent and ate from, or told them to eat from the tree, and immediately they knew they were naked. So that gave them knowledge, and from knowledge became, more knowledge, and then the quest for knowledge, and it's been, this ongoing thing ever since. So in a sense, if you think about it, does that not make sense that the real God would want us to know everything, and somebody that created us that had some sort of jealousy was trying to keep us back? That happens today. That's happening in society today.
Right, but the person that created us would still want us to hail them.
Right.
right? And praise them.
Yeah, but
So
what if
you
their
would want
intentions
they
weren't
would
the
want you to know.
best? What if what if their intentions of creating us, they thought they were doing good, but by creating us, they think about now when you're jealous or you're envious of something, you don't like a part of yourself or you don't like a part of somebody else or whatever the case may be. That's a flaw. And if you're supposedly the God of everything, you wouldn't have that flaw, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's just interesting to think about. I'm not saying this is the right answer or the right way or anything like that. I just think it's super fucking interesting to think about because most people think about as God as, oh, he just created everything. But when you think about angels, then who are angels? Who are archangels? Who is Melchizedek? Who is all these fucking amazing figures from all these ancient texts and all these ancient stories and all that stuff. So I think that there's a hierarchy and there's a whole system in place, and I think people just conveniently think of Jesus and God. And they are the saviors, and Christ was a perfect, or close to a perfect human being, if not perfect, that you could be. And there's interesting things. So, like, one of the more interesting things of the Gnostic Gospels is the Gospel of Thomas, where there's a part where Jesus, when he's a kid, was playing with a kid, and the kid fell off the roof and died, and they thought that Jesus killed the kid. But really, Jesus resurrected this kid back to life, and the kid told everybody, "No, Jesus did not kill me." So there's like a few. There's like a
Real
few.
Jon Snow situation,
Yeah,
huh?
there's like a few real mystical things in there that you wouldn't find in the Bible, which I think is really weird about the Bible because, obviously, the stories of Jesus walking on water and turning water into wine, and Moses parting the Red Sea and all sorts of shit that could be considered that, but raising somebody back to life, like that's some intense shit. That's not splitting some water.
I heard Moses just dropped a little log in a fucking puddle.
Yeah, it was a turd when he saw the fucking waters rising. That's the other thing too. I mean, you think of like Moses and Noah, both these fuckers are old, like who knows how old these people, they always talk about how old these guys are, like 700 years, 300 years. Like, I think they were talking about how it could be that Moses was really like 78 years old, and that the stories of were actually in months as opposed to years or something like that. So there's stuff like that maybe there was some sort of disconnect. The other thing I was thinking about, and this would be crazy, but what if time, obviously we use time to quantify, our separate, 1 minute from the next, or breakdown of experiences or whatever. But what if time was altered by some sort of like the universe or the galaxy around us, meaning that what if there was another planet in orbit, or there was some sort of supernova or something that altered like our orbit or something, and made us spin faster or had a longer orbit or something, because that would affect time based on days.
Yeah, it's weird.
So I was thinking about that too. There could have been some cataclysm, and maybe there was a whole different world of that kind of like the whatever was before, and then after the cataclysm, it changed our orbit or changed the way, our precession or something like that. I don't know. Just an interesting thought. But yeah, back to the Gnostic Gospels. So yeah, there's just so many things. There's like I was saying, Melchizedek. What was I gonna say?
Yeah, who is old Mel?
There's some people say it's a figure, kind of like a Christ type figure that pops up um, over time throughout the Bible. The Bible, I think he's in only two places. I think he's in Genesis, and I think he's in something else. But he supposedly um, he's supposedly a like an order of like Melchizedek could be like an order of priesthood. Like, I've even heard things that say Jesus was part of the order of Melchizedek or whatever. So maybe it's some special, if you're a Christ-like being or you're some evolved spiritual being, maybe that's like the highest order of that or something. But Melchizedek, if you look at like the Urantia papers, talks about how, and by the way, I think a lot of this Gnostic Gospel stuff is stuff that's in the Urantia papers, some of that stuff that you've never heard of that were in some of the religious aspects of it, not the scientific stuff. But if you're going by the Urantia papers, it talks about how Melchizedek is a figure that comes carnated over time to help humanity, get through their woes, basically, if there's some sort of intervention needing to be had or something like that. So maybe like if you see like if we're talking about like good and evil or whatever, if you've got your Hitler and your Hitlers, your Napoleons, your Mussolini, whoever you've got coming back, that could be like the negative or the evil aspect of that, and Melchizedek could be like the positive aspect of it.
Those guys are Melchizedek.
They are Melchizedek crack. But
they come from the hood, man. Melchizedek.
But the thing is, I find it interesting about all this stuff is, like I said, is the timeline when these things were found, the information stating that there was other stuff at bay, than what was meets the eye kind of thing. And I've always believed that. I think I'm a huge believer in intuition. I think they've actually been able to prove that intuition is a real thing and a real capability through science recently. And I'm a firm believer that I've always been intuitive that there is some sort of realm or stuff that we're not seeing or stuff that we're just not understanding, because there's just no explanation for any of this, even if it came from nothing. Well, where did that nothing come from? So,
yeah, some people might say that you're feeling the presence of God or Lord.
Right. Well, maybe I am. Maybe they're angels, like seriously. I mean, I've lost people around me and stuff. They could be angels. They could be spirit guides. They could be, we can only fathom what we can sense, which is our taste, touch, sight, hearing, all that stuff.
Well, if you tap deeper into your pineal gland or whatever the fuck do you call it?
Pineal. Yeah, I just I've always felt like I've been always into this aspect of myself, this intuitive aspect. And look, I'm not just saying this, but when I play like trivia games or I'm taking a test or something, I always go with my gut, and it's always right, usually. Do you ever play this game on your phone called HQ Trivia? I definitely recommend it. You win money, actually.
One of my Fekin plays that.
Yeah, it's actually pretty fun. My fiance got me into it. I've been playing it lately. I got to the end last night, lost one fucking question, almost lost my mind. But so I always stick with my gut feeling, and I think if most people do that, I think everybody will be fine. I think people, when they start to overanalyze and contemplate and go back and forth about things, I think that's when error gets let in, and it's almost like a waste of time. So
yeah, I've experienced that a lot with playing poker. When I don't go with my gut, it's usually right, but you'll talk yourself into doing something stupid.
Yeah, because what's the aspect of it? What's the aspect of it that's holding you up, though, right? It's the moolah, it's the cash.
Got to get the cash, got to get it fast.
I know, but like think about you should play as if you've taken that out of that aspect. You'd be unbelievable, because you're not worried about. You're just reacting upon what you're seeing and what you're experiencing, as opposed to overthinking what this dude's doing or what this dude's doing.
Well, they say you shouldn't have to worry about the cash. If you're playing and you're worried about losing, then you're playing a little too high.
I know, but take that out of the whole concept of it entirely. Like, don't even think that you're like it's money itself, and just play as if it was a game and that you're intuitively trying to figure it out. I guarantee you'd probably clean
right.
up.
Oh yeah, it's hard to disconnect from that cash though.
Right. Oh yeah.
It's
a huge part of our life.
Right. Unfortunately,
it's like a tether,
Yeah.
Yeah. One more thing I want to touch on, all this good stuff and all this this light and life and love. Let's take it to a little dark realm here just for a second. Just because I believe that you can't know the light until you know the darkness.
I'll preach out now.
So the Devil's Bible, also called the Codex Gigas, is a 165-pound book, biggest book in history. It's basically called the Devil's Bible, because
Yeah, because if you read it, you got to be fucking insane.
but the guy that wrote it in 1230 AD was a monk that supposedly made a deal with the devil, in
Oh, could he
one
play the
night.
guitar real good?
Well, no, what he said was, so he was in trouble. He did something wrong. I forget. They were either going to kick him out of the monastery or something like that. And he said to repent his sins or to stay among God's grace or whatever, he was going to compose the greatest thing ever written within one night or something like that.
See, it's always with this music shit, man.
So
I'm telling you.
but it's not music, it's a book. Anyways,
No, I'm saying compose, you know.
right. So he writes this thing supposedly in one night. Now, this thing is still in existence. It's in decent shape. There's some weird stories around it. Different kings and queens have had it. It's escaped numerous fires. Sweden, I think they hold it now, but it used to be in Prague for a long time. And Prague's got a huge, like, dark underbelly there too. But this thing, they analyzed this thing. I watched some National Geographic thing on this, similar to the Dead Sea Scrolls, but it was about this. And what they did was these people analyzed, they were like writing experts and handwriting experts, because they said this thing's so big, nobody could write it in one lifetime, let alone one night. And they analyzed the whole thing, and they said that only one person wrote this based on the handwriting and everything. This massive, massive fucking book.
Crazy.
So yeah, I don't know.
What
I
does it
think
weigh?
165 pounds.
Fuck me.
And actually, it has the only known picture of the devil in any sort of manuscript, meaning that this guy actually drew out this devil. It kind of looks like
Jack Black.
No, it looks like one of the Muppets, the one that's like the one that's like, here, see.
Animal?
Hold on, let me see if I can pull up something here. Yeah, you'll laugh your ass off.
What Muppet? Gonzo?
You'll see. I can't think of the green one that's got like horns.
Kermit.
Oh. You're a hermit. Oh, here we go.
With horns. I don't know any Muppet with horns.
I got this thing. Oh, I got something for that ass. All right, let me pull this thing up here.
So this guy, he drew the devil too? It wasn't just words?
Yeah, he drew it. Let's see.
Oh, I thought you were going to show me the fucking Muppet.
No, fuck the Muppet. Who gives a fuck about the Muppet?
So why would he look like that?
I don't know. That's just how this guy saw him. I'll tell you this: when I meditate and I'm deep in, like sometimes I do it for like an hour or hour and a half. I've done it before where I've gotten so deep where you kind of do coast through these like entities that are like mutated and ugly and, you know.
Yeah. So you're saying it was a vision of some sort?
Yeah, maybe this guy was just tapped into something, or maybe he was having some sort of
probably was taking drugs. If he was writing that
hormone
shit
release, DMT release. He could have been anything.
He was on Adderall, man. Some ancient Adderall for sure.
Right.
He wrote that shit in one night.
We're coming up with a show called Ancient Adderall. Are these aliens doing Adderall?
Yeah, that's how the pyramids were built, man. Adderall. It's that simple.
Yeah.
They didn't give him food. They pumped them up from the fucking Adderall, and these guys carried stones on their back, bro.
So the other thing I was gonna say is, so like that the text, I think one of the people that she was a Queen Christina, I think her name was, from I think it was either Prague or Sweden or something, but she had it for a while, and there was some weird shit with that. One of the people that, I forget, I look it up, but one of the people that owned it killed like a ton of fucking people too, and we were just like pure evil. So different people have had control of this thing, and now it's in a museum. Probably a good thing. It's fucking, you know, occultist doesn't have it or something.
I also think that, you know, when something surrounds something like that, people start, you know, thinking about it, and they start generating their own bad energy that comes with it. So,
right.
Is it evil? I don't know.
Did you listen to that? Did you listen to that podcast with Steven Tyler on Joe Rogan?
No.
they talk about exactly what you're talking about because he was asking him about Muscle Shoals because he was talking about Steven Tyler was talking about how he
Oh yeah,
recorded
yeah.
Muscle Shoals, and they
Right.
were talking about like heart, like there's this other guy Rupert Sheldrake. He's a scientist and he talks about like um, resonance, like harmonic or not harmonic resonance, like basically stuff getting trapped, like the memory of things being trapped in like physical things. So like if it's rocks or crystals or whatever, um, you can so like for instance Muscle Shoals, maybe there's the energy that's been trapped into that room from all the great acts and all the amazing takes and all the stuff. It's just think of it as like the room's got memory basically, and you're feeling that memory when you're
Yeah.
in there, kind of a thing. So that's what they were talking about. I thought that was actually super interesting because I watched that documentary on Netflix about Muscle Shoals too, and it was actually pretty interesting.
But I also think that your brain creates something too when you're anticipate like you're going to Egypt, you're going to play in front of the pyramids, you're anticipating it, you know the history there. That might make it magical because you're generating that kind of energy.
Well, I don't want to speak for sure, and I agree with you, but I think the Grateful Dead or Jerry said that he felt like they played like shit. At
Yeah.
there's something with the wiring was a pain in the ass, or something they had to do. Just like the audio something was a big pain in the ass, and it wasn't as fun or enjoyable or something. I don't know. I forget.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's interesting. I think that you're right too. I think it's a
Maybe it's a mixture
combination.
of both. Yeah.
Well, yeah. What if there's something that's like a giving off something, and then obviously you're the receiver of that. So I mean, that could be it too.
Well, there's a ton of crazy shit that happened surrounding The Exorcist now. Is it came from fucking the beyond, or is it because they're making a movie of the devil and everybody's in that negative mindset and blah blah blah? I don't know.
What do you think? Do you believe in that? Like, do you believe that exorcisms are real, meaning that somebody's
I have
possessed,
no
or
idea.
do you think it's something like schizophrenia, like a severe case of schizophrenia, or some sort of psychological dissociative syndrome or something like that?
I think that there's definitely something amiss with their brain.
Right.
When I chalk it up from fucking being, possessed by the devil, I don't know. I'm not a doctor, but I would
A,
go
cre- a
more toward.
creepy one. A creepy one is actually that exorcism of something Rose, Emily
Yeah, I've
Rose, or
seen
something.
that.
Like that one's interesting because that girl's just a normal school chick, and then all of a sudden she's fucking nutty.
Right, right.
So there's something to that, but
But weird stuff can happen to your brain
the
when
more I think, even though I find all this like heaven and hell shit super interesting, I think though the thing is like recently the Pope came out. He didn't. People think, oh, the Pope reported there's no hell. That's not what happened. I read the whole thing about this. So what happened was,
yeah, he just wanted to fucking be able to do some shit, man. We talked about this. He's
no,
got girls on his arms when he said it and a fucking pipe in his mouth.
he he was having a conversation with some local like journalist guy that he normally has like sit downs with, or just find each other interesting, and like they talk about different things. And in that conversation with that guy, I believe he did say he believes there's no hell or something along those lines. There's no hell, or I think there's no hell, or whatever he said. And that guy wrote that in an article, but I guess they didn't get permission to publish it or for him to say that. And then they had to kind of backtrack on it the next couple of days. Oh, the Pope didn't say this, and all the people from the Vatican are saying it wasn't said, blah, blah. But then I read this thing where he did have the conversation with the guy. He did say something along those lines. And to be honest with you, I believe that. I believe that when we die, we just cease to exist if we're pieces of shit, meaning that if you killed somebody, or you're a pedophile, or you're something disgusting, you're something wrong with you. You've committed some sort of heinous act or horrific stuff, or whatever the case may be. Maybe your soul, instead of moving on to the next realm or whatever, it just ceases to exist, meaning that you've embraced, like I think that's what all these like the Urantia papers, all these things they talk about. If you get too attached to the material world, or you've embraced negative and evil and all that stuff, if you've embraced it towards the end, then yes, you might cease to exist, meaning otherwise your soul would just move on to the next level type of a thing. So yeah, I don't know. I think I'm inclined to believe that. Why, I mean, we have jails here and prisons and stuff like that, but we don't have prisons where the devil's tickling somebody's butthole over a fire while he's being stabbed by hot pokers, So it's like, I think that there's different levels to that too, but I just think that if you're a terrible person, you're most likely just, your soul will cease to exist. So
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Being tickled in the ass with a feather and poked, that might be someone's heaven. I don't know.
That's your fetish, bro. But
one person's heaven can be another person's hell, and we will end it on that.
I didn't mean to reveal you, but yes, we will end it on that.
Sorry, I'm more of a peanut butter guy myself, but
a peanut butter and Gordon the Gecko type of guy. All right, folks. Well, thank you for joining us again, and we'll catch you next time.
Peace.
Peace.